Welcome to week 14 of Bible Studies for Life, Youth Leaders Edition. We're in the spring quarter of 2026. This is our last week in this quarter, and so we're excited about this passage. We've been in the book of Acts for a good while now, and so we're going to look at this great passage, what happens with Paul when he is in Jerusalem. And really, the focus of this passage to me is the testimony that Paul shares, his own personal testimony of God's work in his life. So we're going to look at Acts. We're in chapter 21 and chapter 22. It says, the whole city was stirred up and the people rushed together. They seized Paul, dragged him out of the temple, and at once the gates were shut. Okay, look, you've got to read the first part of this chapter to understand what's happening. Paul has been in the temple. He's had some people there. They're having this, there's been this conflict in Christianity about whether Gentiles had to be completely Judaized or not. And of course, Paul was against that, and the church had made this decision that it wasn't the case. But Paul had come into the temple. People had gotten upset about it. It looks to be Jews and not Jewish Christians, but they are upset about Paul being there, and so they go into a riot. People, it was easy. It was easy to stir up a riot, it seemed, because they did it a lot. The whole city got stirred up. And so they dragged Paul out of the temple, and once the gates were shut, as they were trying to kill him, look at this, they wanted to kill Paul. Word went up to the commander of the regiment, this is the Roman regiment, that all Jerusalem was in chaos. You see chaos, okay, we're stirred up. They're going to kill this guy. It's just a mob, right? They're in chaos. So taking along soldiers and centurions, he immediately ran down to them. Seeing the commander and the soldiers, they stopped beating Paul. So they're beating Paul up. It's not been an easy day for Paul. It's a tough day. You see, there's chaos happening, right? There's anger. They're going to kill Paul. Religious differences. They're going to kill Paul. Okay. Then the commander approached, took him into custody, and ordered him to be bound with 2 chains. He asked who he was and what he had done. This is great, right? So they take him into custody, they bind him up with 2 chains, and then ask, hey, who is this guy? What's he done? Not taking the mob that is taking the law into their own hands and saying we got to punish these people. But said they're beating this guy up, they must have a reason. Let's grab him, let's put him in custody, and then we'll find out what's going on. Right? So some in the crowd were shouting one thing and some another. They couldn't get their story straight. Since he was not able to get reliable information because of the uproar, he ordered him to be taken into the barracks. And when Paul got to the steps, he had to be carried by the soldiers because of the violence of the crowd. For the mass of people followed, yelling, "Get rid of him." Do you see the anger? They are ready to get rid of Paul. They are going to kill him. He is horrible. And it says, look, they had to, because of the crowd, the violence of the crowd, they had to carry him into the barracks. I don't know if that meant that he had been so beat up that he couldn't walk, or if they were still pressing in on the soldiers so much that they had to physically hold him and keep him away from the crowd. Whatever it is, you see this great anger against Paul. Okay, now we're going from verse 36, chapter 22, verse 1. You got to read the part in between. Because Paul basically stands up and says, hey, look, I'm a Jew. I'm one of them. Let me talk to them. Let me say something to them. And so he does, which is crazy, right? You think, get me out of here, man. Protect me. Save my life. No, Paul says, let me talk to these people. He wants to tell them his story. So here he goes. Brothers and fathers, listen now to my defense before you. And when they heard that he was addressing them in Aramaic, they became even quieter. He continued, look, I am a Jew. I'm born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city, educated at the feet of Gamaliel, according to the strictness of our ancestral law. I was zealous for God, just as all of you are today. Paul starts to share his testimony, and he begins with, I'm one of you. I'm a Jew. I was brought up in this city. I was educated at the feet of Gamaliel, who was one of the most famous teachers there was. It says, I was zealous for God just as you are today. I know the law. I live for it. Not only that, look what he says. I persecuted this way to the death. I love this. It wasn't called Christianity, it was just called the way. Probably after Jesus, he said, I am the way. I persecuted them to the death, arresting and putting both men and women in jail. We know this, right? Because Paul was there when Stephen was stoned to death, and Paul was on a mission to arrest Christians when Jesus showed up to him. He says, as both the high priest and the whole council of elders can testify about me. Look, you go to your leadership, and they'll tell you, that's who I was. They know me. After I received letters from them to the brothers, I traveled to Damascus to arrest those who were there and to bring them to Jerusalem to be punished. Paul says, I was you, just like you. I was just like you. I had the same thoughts you do. I was doing the exact same thing you're doing. I was passionate about those same things you're passionate about. And then something happened. As I was traveling and approaching Damascus about noon, an intense light from heaven suddenly flashed around me. I fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to me, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? I answered, who are you, Lord? He said to me, I am Jesus of Nazareth, the one you are persecuting. Now those who were with me saw the light, but they didn't hear the voice of the one who was speaking to me. And I said, what should I do, Lord? And the Lord told me, get up and go into Damascus, and there you will be told everything that you have been assigned to do. Okay. Now Paul tells, here's what happened to me. Here's how I came to Christ. Here's the change that happened in my life, right? And he tells the story, which is shown in Acts chapter 9. That's where it's originally recorded, in Acts chapter 9. He just retells the story, right? There was an intense light. I fell to the ground. I heard a voice. Why are you persecuting me? I said, who are you? And he said, I am Jesus. I am the one you are persecuting. No, he's persecuting other people, Christians. He was persecuting the body of Christ. Jesus was right there because he is Christ. And when we become saved, we become a part of his body, and he suffers the pains and enjoys the victories just as we do, because he is us. We are him. We are part of the body. And he says, people that were with me, they saw the light, didn't hear the voice. And he said, what do I do? Excuse me. He said, then the Lord told me, well, you go into Damascus, and you're going to be told everything that you have been assigned to do. The Lord had a plan for Paul's life. Now catch this. Here he talks about my past. Here's what I was like before. Well, that's not very good writing. This was me before I got saved. This is how I met Christ. Nobody else has this story, do they? Nobody else has this kind of amazing, dramatic story. Nobody else has that. We don't have to have that. You know what you can say, though, in a couple of short sentences? I came to a place where I knew that I needed to give my life to Jesus Christ. I knew that what I was doing was not going to be enough, and the Lord made it very clear to me that I needed to follow him. Simple, right? We don't all have that dramatic testimony like that. He says, since I couldn't see because of the brightness of the light, I was led by the hand of those who were with me and went into Damascus, and someone named Ananias. There's this Ananias guy. He was a devout man according to the law, who had a good reputation with all the Jews living there. And he came and he stood by me and he said, Brother Saul, regain your sight. In that very hour I looked up and I saw him, and he said, the God of our ancestors has appointed you to know his will, to see the righteous one, and to hear the words from his mouth, since you will be a witness for him to all people of what you have seen and heard. And now, why are you delaying? Get up and be baptized and wash away your sins, calling on his name. Here's my story. I gave my life to Jesus because I knew this guy told me there is something for me, right? The God of our ancestors has appointed you to know his will, to see the righteous one, to hear the words from his mouth, and to be a witness for him to all people. You're supposed to tell everybody. So why are you delaying? What are you waiting on? What are you waiting on? Listen, this is the truth for all of us. The Lord has appointed us to know Him, to hear Him, and to share Him, to tell other people all over the world, to tell them about His great love. So what are you waiting for? Why are you delaying? What is it that's keeping you from doing exactly what God has called you to do? What is it that's keeping you from following the Lord who has appointed you to do good works? What is it that's holding you back? We must get about the business of following Him. Hey, I hope that's helped. This is a great deal. We need to learn to share our testimony, to talk about here I was before, not a big part, but a little bit. Then God changed my life, and now I am following Him. I am doing my best to live my life for Him, to make Him known among the nations. This is God's call on my life, on your life, on all of your students' lives. They need to hear that God has a plan for them. He has appointed them to serve Him, to make His name widely known. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, you need to subscribe, you need to like, you need to share the video with somebody else, and certainly give us a comment or whatever. Let me tell you that I'm not going to be doing youth videos over the summer. We may pick up again in the fall, but we'll see. But I'm glad you've been watching. Watch the others. You can find, if you're looking for if you're looking for a particular passage that you're teaching, you can go through the playlist, find that book, and you can probably find that passage somewhere in the video I've already made. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.